Hey guys, welcome back to another lesson for this week. Today is Tuesday, and we are going to be focusing again this week on summarizing. Now, remember, summarizing has to do with pulling out the main ideas and the key details, and then telling a person or writing it down, maybe all of those important things that you read about, so they don't have to read it. Well, this week we're going to be looking at a text called Where It All Began. Now, this text is going to focus on our essential question that has to do with the past and how the past helps us understand the present. So let's get started. Let's read. We're going to talk about events that happen in order. So I also want you to focus on sequence. And we focused on sequence last week, which has to do with the time and how they appear in a text. Okay? So let's go ahead and let's get started reading Where It All Began. Don't forget the captions that go along with the photos, they provide extra information. So here is the caption, and I want to make sure that I read that caption so I understand the picture. I also want to make sure that I'm paying attention to my headings because the headings tell me what I'm going to read about. So let's look at the caption that goes with this photograph. And it says, the building of the Jamestown settlement in 1607. Let's get started with our reading. Take a tour of Jamestown, Virginia, the birthplace of America. They thought they were lost. The Susan Constant, the Godspeed, and the Discovery had sailed from London, England on December 20th, 1606. The expedition was bound for Virginia, carrying 144 people. Finally, on April 26, 1607, the ship sailed into Chesapeake Bay. In the words of one voyager, they found fair meadows and goodly tall trees. On an island in a river, they built a fort and named it after their king, James. Jamestown would become the first successful permanent English settlement in the New World. We're going to stop right there. You can see the sequence of events happening in this story. Now remember, sequence of events can be told using dates or even words like finally, then, and next. Let's keep going. The struggle to survive. There is a proverb that says, ignorance is bliss. In the case of the 104 men and boys who came ashore, this was true. They were faced with tremendous challenges. The water from the James River was not safe to drink, and food was scarce. That means there was not a lot of food to eat. 2 weeks after the settlers arrived, 200 Indians attacked them. So you can still see that sequence of events coming through in the text. John Smith, an experienced military man, became head of the colony in 1608. He had been in charge of finding local tribes willing to swap food for English copper and beads. Smith was tough with both the Indians and Englishmen. He that will not work shall not eat, he told the colonists. Smith knew that an attitude of every man for himself would endanger the colony. The western Chesapeake area was ruled by Chief Powhatan, who governed an empire of 14,000 eloquent-speaking peoples. His daughter, Pocahontas, became a useful friend and ally to John Smith. Now, let's take a look at the caption so we understand the photo. Pocahontas saved the life of Captain John Smith. The real-life Pocahontas. Princess Monaco was born around 1595. Her father, Chief Powhatan, called her Pocahontas. She saved John Smith's life twice, and he wrote that Pocahontas's wit and spirit were unequaled. Pocahontas married a planter named John Rolfe, the first marriage in that era between an Englishman and a Native American woman. Rolfe, Pocahontas, and their son visited London. She never returned home. She fell ill aboard a ship bound for Jamestown in March 1617, and died. Taking a closer look. Archaeologists digging in Jamestown have discovered Indian artifacts along with English ones, evidence that Indians lived in the fort for some time. It must have been a very close relationship, says William Caliso, an expert in colonial American archaeology. Caliso has worked for 10 years to document this site. His team has managed to uncover more than 1 million artifacts and has mapped out the fort's shape, its foundation, and a burial ground. So you can see how archaeologists are able to dig up the past and tell us what happened then. Jamestown left a record of greed and war, but it was also the start of representative government. The settlers gave America a solid foundation to build upon. Now let's take a look at the photograph along with the caption so we can see what is happening. Dr. William Caliso working on the archaeological dig in Jamestown. So you can see the actual photograph of Dr. Caliso working on a dig in Jamestown. Now take a look at the map up top also, because that gives you also some very important information. Here's the map key. The green arrows indicate immigration. The orange blocks are the extent of the European settlement in 1700. And then you can see these keys over here indicate specific things in the area, in the state of Virginia. Now, I had told you we are going to focus again on summarizing. So let's take a look one more time and get a refresher at what summarizing is, so that way you and I can practice summarizing the real-life Pocahontas together. All right, guys and girls, so we have decided that this week again we're focusing on summarizing. So again, for the third week, your goal is going to be to summarize the text by identifying the main idea and key details. Now, you're used to this because you've been practicing it for the last few weeks. Now, to summarize, it's still the same thing. You are retelling the most important details in a paragraph or a section, and you're wanting to retell those details in logical order. That means you're telling them in the sequence that they happen. So we're not going out of order, we're telling them in order. Here's the helpful hints. I put 2 down this week so it can help you better summarize the text. The first one is still the same. You're retelling the key details and putting them in your own words. You're also making sure that you are telling them in the order that they happened. And the second hint for summarizing is you want to make sure that your summary is free of opinions. So you don't necessarily want to put your opinion into a summary because a summary is just telling facts that happen. Now let's practice together. You and I are going to be taking a look at the section, The Real Life Pocahontas, from where it all began, and we're going to put it into our own words. So let's pull up the passage again so we can reread it and tell the important key details so we can write a summary. All right, let's go ahead and reread the section that was titled The Real Life Pocahontas. Now, we've been talking for quite some time about rereading passages. Remember, good readers always go back and they read things multiple times to make sure that they understand them. So that's what we're going to do again today so we can write our summary. The Real Life Pocahontas. Princess Watauga was born around 1595. Her father, Chief Powhatan, called her Pocahontas. She saved John Smith's life twice, and he wrote that Pocahontas's wit and spirit were unequaled. Now, let's stop right there and let's think about some of the important details in there that we cannot leave out in a summary. Okay? You and I know that Pocahontas is a Native American woman. She's definitely famous. She's the daughter of a chief, and she saved John Smith's life. Now, the fact that she saved it twice, that's great information, but our readers don't necessarily need to know that. They also probably don't need to know that her wit and spirit were unequaled. Although that's very important information, we can probably leave that out in a summary. So keep those key details in that passage, keep those key details that I just mentioned in your head, so that way when we write our summary, we can include them. Pocahontas married a planter named John Rolfe, the first marriage in that era between an Englishman and a Native American woman. Rolfe, Pocahontas, and their son visited London. She never returned home. She fell ill aboard a ship bound for Jamestown in March 1617 and died. So we already have our first few details from the first paragraph. Now let's think what would be some more important details that I would need to include in a summary. Now remember, I'm trying to save my reader time. I don't want my reader to have to read this section because my summary is going to be so great that it's going to have all the information in there and it's going to save them some time. So let's take a look at that second paragraph and see what's important. You're right. The fact that she married an Englishman was very important. The fact that she was the first Native American woman to marry an Englishman is also important as well. So we probably will include that in our summary. What would be something else that I'd want to include in my summary? Although the fact that she never returned home is great, it's not necessarily important enough to include it. But the fact that she did pass away in March 1617 is important, so we probably want to include that in our summary. Let's head over to our other slides and let's input our summary based on the real-life Pocahontas. Alright, so I have pulled up both the passage and our summary examples together so we can go ahead and fill it in. So we had some key details that we talked about from the first paragraph that we were going to include. And the fact that Pocahontas was a Native American woman is something I definitely want to include. So rather than copying straight from the text, I'm going to put it in my own words, and it's going to say something like, Pocahontas was a famous Native American woman. I also said that we probably want to tell the reader that her father was Chief Powhatan. Now, instead of using those exact words, what words could we use? Now, if it's her father, that definitely means that she must be his daughter. So I will include that in there so it's in my own words. She was the daughter of Chief, and I'm going to put his exact name because that's important information. And we also decided that the fact that she saved John Smith's life was important too. So I'll stick that in there. And saved John Smith's life. So that takes care of all the important details from paragraph 1. Now, when we went through paragraph 2, we also picked out important information, and the fact that she was the first Native American woman to marry an Englishman is also important in there, is also important as well. So we'll put Pocahontas was the first Native American woman to marry an English man. And we also decided the month and the year that she passed away was also important. She passed away in March of 1917. So that would be our summary for the real life Pocahontas. I've included all the important details for my reader, so they no longer have to read the text. They could just read the summary that we wrote over here and get all of the information that they need. Now, you're probably asking yourself, well, what's going to be my assignment? You are going to head over to Google Classroom, and you are going to complete the assignment that's labeled Unit 5, Week 5, Summarize. Here's what the assignment looks like. When you get to Google Classroom, here's the assignment. You will be reading, taking a closer look, and summarizing it in your own words.